And there we go, 38 kilometers an hour. Easy as that. G'day everyone, my name's Simo and I'm doing something naughty today.
Do you want to know how the naughty is punished?
I'm going to be de-restricting the max top speed on my e-bike from 25 kilometers an hour to approximately 40 kilometers an hour. Now, before you all get on your high horse, let me say a few things. Number one, if you're fit and healthy, you can pedal a mountain bike at 30 kilometers an hour on flat road, no problem. Number two, restricting the top speed of your e-bike to 25 kilometers an hour, it can be potentially dangerous for a number of reasons, okay? Now, just think when you're doing jumps, right? And if you're not on an e-bike and you're coming up to a jump, you recognise your speed is too slow. You're going to put in a couple of pedal cranks to get a bit more speed when you hit the jump to clear the jump. Because the last thing we want to do, especially in gap jumps, is to case the landing or even to come up short. That's even worse, you know, front wheel first, over the bars, all sorts of injuries. Not nice stuff. On an e-bike, if you've ever ridden an e-bike and you've been in that situation where you're coming up to a jump and you're around that 25 kilometres an hour mark and you recognise that you need a bit more speed to hit the jump, you put in a couple of cranks and the power drops off at 25 kilometres an hour, you hit a wall, so to speak, because it's a heavy bike. This bike weighs 25 kilos and you're not pedaling it any faster. You hit the jump, you're not going fast enough. Super dangerous. Another reason too is when you're riding along on the streets and say you're riding through dodgy parts of town and someone's trying to, you know, someone's going to knock you off your bike to steal your bike from you. You need to go faster than 25 kilometres an hour. 25 kilometres an hour is just too low in my opinion. And New Zealand, for example, their bikes are limited to 32 kilometres an hour. And I would be happy with 32 kilometres an hour. And 32 kilometres an hour also demonstrates that it's not going to put your bike, your electric motor and components at risk of damage because they're operating at higher speeds and higher loads, you know. The manufacturer wouldn't allow it if it was going to be a problem. So, I'm going to tell the truth today too because I've had my bike unrestricted for quite a while. I haven't been riding much for the last few years, but I've had what they call a chip. And what the chip does, it intercepts the signal between the speed sensor to the electric motor ECU. So, as it currently is, through the speed sensor, the ECU, the electronic computer unit, recognises how fast the bike's going, and then it will, you know, determine when to cut off the power to the motor when it reaches 25 kilometres an hour. Now these chips, what they do is they intercept the signal between the speed sensor and the ECU, tricks the ECU into thinking that it's going slower than it is. So when you actually do really hit 25 kilometres an hour, it keeps supplying power to the motor. So in effect, you get a higher top speed. The problem is with these chips is when they sell them, right, they don't tell you that the software in the computer, in the electric engine, is smart enough to recognise that it's been tricked. And over a period of time, it'll go into limp mode, throw an error code, de-restrict it so you can't pedal it any faster than about 10 kilometres an hour or something, I think. Then what you have to do, you have to disconnect the chip, take it into the dealer, because currently they only have the equipment that can access the programming and, you know, remove the error code, set it back to normal again, and then the bike's good again. But it costs you money and it costs you time, and it should be happening. And they don't disclose this information to you when you sell the chip, which I believe is unethical, because when I made inquiries about it, they didn't mention anything about that ever happening. They just said, yeah, that's good, you'll be able to, you know, more power, high top speed, blah, blah, blah. $400 later, wasted my money because it's unusable. It's going to cause problems and continues to cause problems. So what's the alternative? The alternative is one of these. Okay? And what we have here, we have two magnets and we have an internal mechanism in here. We have a gear here, which is called the sun gear. And we have these two gears here, which drive the magnets on the other side. And they're called the planetary gears. So what happens is this gets installed on the rear axle. All right, I'll show you on the bike where the magnet is that currently provides the signal for the sensor. That's what we've got here. That's the magnet. And then on the other side of the chainstay, we have the sensor. Here's a little demonstration of how this mechanical derestrictor works. So this yellow mark here is there to show you a revolution of the wheel. Now you watch the magnet in relation to that yellow mark. Okay. You can see it moves much slower than the actual yellow mark. And it took 1.5 revolutions for one pass of the magnet. So that means it should be 1.5 times the top speed that what I have now. And if I calculated that right, 25 by 1.5 is about 38 kilometers an hour. We shall see. All right, I got the speed limiting device fitted on the rear wheel. That's all done and ready to go. So now let's go for a test drive. Hopefully we'll get 38 kilometers an hour. I've also mounted a speedo that's going to read the true speed. That's this one here. And on this display here is going to be the speed that the ECU thinks it's going at. So this one is going to be less than this one, and hopefully we'll get 38 kilometers an hour. Let's go for a ride. I'm excited. Let's see if we can get 38 kilometers an hour. There we are. 38, 39 kilometers an hour, 26 kilometers an hour on the speedo. That's what the bike thinks it's doing. Easy as that. Okay, so that's worked out pretty sweet. I've got 38 kilometers an hour. I've got one more trick up my sleeve that will get me about 40, 41 kilometers an hour. But I'm not going to tell you right now. If you can guess what it is, let me know in the comment sections below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.